Hi, my name is David Breslow, founder of Performance Success Strategies and the Peak Tennis Program. Today I want to talk to you just a little bit about what most people call the mental game, and I'm going to be adding some future videos on more specific areas related to how tennis players are having problems on the tennis court. But I want to share with you a little bit of a story first. I'm in the what people would call mental game business. But the reality is, I'm actually in the change the way you play the game business. Now I have a real problem with that phrase, mental game, but it's the phrase that most people seem to use. And here's why I have that problem. The reason is because it's really not a mental game in terms of the way people talk about it. Most people talk about their mental game as if it's actually part of their game. And when I go across the country to many different clubs or doing speaking engagements, I often ask people to rate it. What's the percentage of your game do you think is mental? Out of 100%, let's say. I hear answers ranging from 10% to 90 to 95%. The most common answer I hear is 75%. That's the national average, 75%. So these players are thinking that their game is 75% mental, meaning that it's 25% physical and how they manage the court and what goes on and the conditions on the court and everything else. Well, here's something very interesting. 88% of my tennis clients will tell me that their results do not match the time, the effort, and the money that they invest on their own games. 88%. That's pretty high, isn't it? That tells you that what people are doing isn't working. So as long as people see the mental game as being 50, 20, 30, 90, 95% of their game, in my opinion, they're really missing the boat. Because here's my response to that. I think what people call the mental game, and the way that I teach it in the Peak Tennis Program, is really 100% of your game. And I can prove it to you too. And when you take a look at some of the items I have, or the articles that I have online, or the products that I have available online, I will prove it to you. And I have no problem doing that. But the reality is, this thing we call a mental game impacts you far more than you might imagine. It really is 100% of your game. And a lot of players are going around thinking that it's actually part of their game. And they say this, they indicate this, I should say, by saying phrases like, I really should work on the mental part of my game. It really needs help. Or my mental game wasn't very good today. And somehow those comments are indicating that they actually see it as something separate from their game. And what I'm suggesting to you, it is not. It has everything to do with your game. All aspects of your game, and you can't get away from it. And the way that I teach it, it is 100% of your game, and it's being run, literally run, by what I call laws of human performance. And these laws are undeniable, they're predictable, and best of all, they're provable. So here's just a short story before I go for today about myself. As a fledgling tennis player, when I first began to play, and I learned the game pretty easily. I had really nice strokes, very powerful, I had really great timing, I moved beautifully on the court, and none of that was really a problem. I set up well for shots, I practiced really great. I had one problem: I couldn't win. And I was losing to players that were far less talented, physically talented, than I was. And it was incredibly frustrating, and I hear this a lot from my tennis clients. It's unbelievable how many people believe in their talent, but they go out on the court and still underperform. And that may be you, if you're watching this video right now. But here's what happened. I went on a journey. I read all the books. I read the books on peak performance. I read the books on sports psychology. I got as much information as I could. But the reality was, nothing really changed all that much. Or if it did change, it was kind of sporadic. In and out, here and there, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. And it was pretty frustrating to go through that entire experience. And that's when I realized that this game, and here's the biggest little secret of all, let me share this with you right now. Biggest little secret of all is nothing in your game is going to change until you change. And I'm dead serious about that statement. I talk to so many players who are running around looking at books and reading magazine articles, watching the Tennis Channel, getting video cassettes, getting CDs, getting all sorts of stuff, and they're just loaded with information. And yet their game really hasn't changed all that much. There's a reason for this. because they're doing what I call the cut and paste method. They're actually cutting a whole bunch of information out there and trying to paste it onto themselves, somehow thinking that that's going to change them. And it doesn't. It really needs to be a blend of the two. The tips and information are fine, nothing wrong with them, but if you don't change yourself first, all those great tips and all the beautiful information doesn't really have much of a fighting chance to take place and settle in. And that's why people have sporadic results. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. The game of tennis, the sport of tennis, the mental game is 100% of your game. And the reality is, when you change, everything in your game will begin to change as a reflection of it. That I can guarantee you. So Dave Breslow here, signing off, and stay tuned for other videos that are going to deal with more specific topics as well, like how to be fearless, and how to focus on the right things during a match, how to get started more quickly, how to be more confident, and such things of that nature. So I'm glad that you were able to hang out with me for a few minutes, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.